Hey guys, Jason Stallworth back again with Metal Mastermind, and welcome to part 2 of our 5-part series with Nic Z called Mixing Metal EQ Hacks. Now in part 1, Nic simplified the EQ process. I mean, that video, you already know if you've seen it, what saved you a lot of time and frustration when it comes to mixing metal music and dealing with EQ, what should I do? So if you haven't seen that yet, I strongly encourage you to go back and watch that first. We have a link to all of the videos in this series in the description of this video. If you've already seen it, well, let's roll on with part 2 here. And Nic is going to talk about something that we all deal with and how to overcome this, and that is choice fatigue.
But once you have this down, then you can move over to hack 2. And it's another zoomed out EQ. And what I mean by zoomed out, like I said it before, but like to be more specific with it now, like what I'm actually talking about is choice fatigue. And what I mean by that is, like, so when I open up an instance of EQ, right? And say I go to guitars. Let's put it on the guitars. Bring this one up. So what I did with the car stereo EQ and with the 2-band EQ is I limited our choices. Okay, and it's hugely important for when you're learning EQ to do that. And nobody tells you that. Nobody tells you that, like, listen, if you go in with a parametric EQ and it gives you this kind of decision that you can make, like you can push on, well, this only goes to plus 15, but like if I use FabFilter, which I normally use, like I could push this to 30. I could do 30 dB, and I could do it this narrow on any band that I want throughout 20 to 20K to 30K. This goes up to 30K. Anything that I want, and I can do like 75 instances of EQ on with this one EQ. I can just keep moving stuff around, keep moving it around, keep moving this, keep moving that. And I mean, I could do as much or as it'll let me do. I think there's like literally like a not even a finite amount of moves that you can make on this EQ. And the point is that it's fatiguing when you have that much choice. Like you look at it, you go, all right, I got to make these guitars sound good. Like everything is on the line. Like, what am I going to do? And they give you this blank canvas of colors to play with. And they're like, well, what should you do? And you're like, oh, I don't know. Do I like, you know, maybe I'll bring up some low, but you're not sure which frequency in the low you're supposed to bring up or that you should bring up or whatever. And then you're like, well, maybe I'll bring up some high. Or no, I heard you're supposed to have mids on guitar. So, you know, maybe I'll bring up some mids. And then you try to bring up like this frequency here and it doesn't sound good. And you're just like, you're driving yourself crazy. And you're like, well, do I have too much or too little? And by the time you're done with it, you have some abomination EQ and you've totally destroyed the signal. And I know this because I've done this 100,000 times. I've gone in and tried to EQ and just mangled the signal with EQ because I thought that's what I was supposed to be doing. And it's not. Some people, I mean, can get away with that if they really know what they're doing, which I do now. But I mean, it took a good 10 years to get to that spot where I actually know how to move stuff around properly. But so in that vein comes EQ hack number 2, and that is our friend, the graphic EQ. Okay, so it's similar to the idea of the 2-band and the 3-band car stereo, only this time we have 7 bands. And this comes with Reaper. This is just a 7-band EQ. And these are my choices. I have 100 hertz, 200 hertz, 400 hertz, 800 hertz, 2.5K, 6K, and 12K. And that's it. And a high-pass filter, which is a filter on the bottom that looks like this. And it basically is taking away, and I have no idea what the Q is on this. Q is the function that allows you to change the range of EQ. So if you're looking at like a bell this size, like if I change the Q, I'm doing it with my mouse, but it's down here. You can get very narrow or very wide. Okay, and when you're talking about filters and you're talking about Q, how is it doing that? I guess it's doing an analog here, but you can change, or I guess that is the Q technically. But I have no idea what the per octave frequency is on this either. And when you're talking about filters, that's kind of the important thing you want to know. Because if something is really shallow in a filter like this, look, I'll show you what this sounds like. So let's go to my guitars. So I'm on these guitars, and I'm gonna do a really, really shallow filter. And I mean, I can go all the way to this, which is brick wall, which just means that it's basically deletion. I'm deleting everything. But when it's per octave like this, I'll show you how it sounds. So I can just tell at 90 hertz that that's starting to roll off at 6 dB, right? But if I make it a brick wall, watch. So with a brick wall, like, I can only go to like 48 or so before I start really being able to tell that there's a loss. And I don't know if you could hear it when I was A-Bing it, but like there's very clearly information down here that, you know, I don't know if I'm going to want. But the point of all of this is I have no idea what the slope is on this high-pass filter. It's just a high-pass filter. Nor do I know what the Q is on this 100 hertz. So again, to illustrate it, if I go to 100 hertz here, like that's okay, good. That's my Q. But I can change this to anything that I want. So I don't know if it's like this or like this or like this or like this. Like I don't have any idea. Nor do I care. Like, the idea isn't to mess around with cues, it's to mess around with the bands, and it's to eliminate that choice fatigue, to keep zooming out, zooming out, zooming out, to lessen my choices until this is all I have, right? So let's mess with this on the guitars and see if we can get these guitars to sound cool. And I mean, they already sound pretty cool. Jay gave us a really good recording that doesn't need a whole lot of EQ unless it's contextualized, which we'll get to in a minute. But let's check it out by itself. All right, so I moved it around a little bit, and it sounds cooler to me, but there's no context. So this is where it becomes kind of fun and important. But you can see that, like, these are the choices I have. Like, this 8K boost that I did or whatever, like, that's all I got. Like, normally I wouldn't mess with 8K on guitars. I would mess with like 7, or rather 800 hertz. I would mess with 700 hertz. And I'm usually turning it down. But here it sounded good to push it up. And it's the only frequency I had to mess with, so I'm not worried about it. So we zoomed way out. And this is all we got.
Guys, if this video helped you, please give it a thumbs up. And if you enjoyed Nic's teaching style and his approach, the way he simplifies things, Nic has an entire course where he goes through the complete process of mixing for multiple subgenres of metal. It's called Metal Producer Overlord. There's a link for that course in the description of this video. Nic also does one-on-one consultations. So if that's something that you're interested in, we'll have a link to that in the description as well. And we'll also have links to all of the videos in this series here, in the EQ Hack series. We'll have that in the description of this video, so do check that out. And thank you so much for being a part of Metal Mastermind. We appreciate you. As always, create your own sound.